Buy my novel, Escape from the Village, from major booksellers online. Go to escapevillage.com. Subscribe to my Substack. Go to fountainheadforum.substack.com. Thank you. Welcome to the party, pal. This is Fountainhead Forum 121. I've got bow-tied Mara. He is a financial advisor and also a relocation advisor living in Argentina right now. And we're again going to talk about Javier Milei and what's been going on down there. The election is 2 days away. This is Friday, 20 October. How you doing, Mara?
Doing well, thanks. Thanks for having me on.
So how did you get into all this work?
I moved to here around 2005. So it's almost 20 years now that I've been living here. And I've always had a fascination for Latin America and Argentina specifically. And I moved here initially, trying to build up my whole life here with the local economy, et cetera, but quickly found out that was not the way to do it because you just get completely crushed by inflation and, earning pesos is just not the way to go. So eventually I shifted to more foreign income, and that way you can have a pretty big or high standard of living here in Argentina.
Yeah, sounds good. Yeah. So, it's a pretty cheap living down there. It's from what I hear, it's cheaper than any place in South America. Is that true?
I think it's probably on par with Colombia, and it might be a little bit cheaper now that the peso keeps devaluating because not all businesses up their prices directly. So, now there are really neighborhood restaurants where you can have a steak for like $7.
Yeah, that's pretty interesting. Yeah, cheap steaks. Yeah. And of course, they got a lot of beef there anyway to begin with, and a lot of meat. It seems like it's a pretty much. I've certainly heard good things about their meat industry down there. So, yeah,
it's one of the things they're known for. Really, really good barbecues here.
Yeah. So what have you noticed during the last 20 years down there? You've been there for a while. It seems like there's been this the collapse of Peronism and other things like that.
I wouldn't call it a collapse. I think it's probably an interval now that people are so sick of the current status quo that they're even the more Peronist leaning people are starting to shift away and trying to vote for something else. The big danger is, in my opinion, is the fact that there's almost no institutional backing for Milei. So even though I think he will probably win, it's likely that he'll win at least in the second round, or he might even win in the first round. After that, we're going to experience like some turbulence. That's almost a given because the Peronists will do everything in their power to make it impossible for him to govern. And it will become, they will incite riots and stuff. So it will become really interesting to see how his government would deal with that kind of situation, because it's really a powder keg right now also in terms of hyperinflation. And basically, they're doing everything to hand over a ticking time bomb to the next government. No matter who will be in place, it's going to be hyperinflation no matter what by this point.
Yeah, I'd be worried about the Peronistas too, and I'd also be worried about, I don't know, any groups funded by Castro or anybody like that. The small minority who would vote for Miriam Bregman, who seems to be of course Che was also from that country, so
yeah.
You see Che T-shirts in America. Do you see Che T-shirts down there?
Yeah, I mean, there's always like this Trotsky minority that always votes left. It's usually around 3 to 5%. And I think actually during these elections, they might even get some more votes, which would be positive for Milei, because those would basically be votes that would be pulled away from Massa. Because just to understand, Massa, he's in the current government as the Minister of Economy. But at the same time, he's sort of more of the, considered right wing by left wing Peronism. So a lot of people who are, way more left wing really do not like voting for Massa, and the majority just votes for him because they have to, sort of like, cross my heart. I really don't want to vote this guy, but I'm going to do it anyway, just to make sure Milei doesn't win. and some people will probably vote, for Bregman, or more, left-wing candidates, and those votes will be pulled away from Massa. So that's technically in the interest of Milei that happens.
So even though you have a runoff, and even though you have a full multi-party system,
Mm-hmm.
there's still this nonsense of I don't want so and so, but I've got to vote for so and so I don't get the other so and so.
Yeah.
I don't know. I wonder sometimes, is it possible to get away from that? And it doesn't seem like it is, even if you have runoffs or whatever. And really, it makes me question overall just whether or not voting works at all.
Well, yeah, that's a good question. I mean, voting and the way the democracies work is basically a tyranny of the majority, right? And and especially like here, the nice thing is that now finally there's an outsider who challenges like the status quo, which is basically the Bullrich and Massa. They're always in government, and Milei is sort of breaking that pattern.
Yeah.
Which is very exceptional, and he does that with almost no budget at all, which is even more exceptional. So it's really like a grassroots kind of movement right now. But yeah, it's you see the same thing everywhere in Brazil, in the States.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But if you ask somebody why they drink Pepsi, they don't say, well, I don't like Pepsi, but I only drink Pepsi because I don't want Coke to be the number one soft drink.
Yeah.
And you don't hear, well, I don't like Coke, but I only drink Coke because I don't want Pepsi to be the number one soft drink. It's such an idiotic mentality. And it is.
Yeah, it is.
It's absolutely ridiculous that but this is the reality of voting. And it's.
Yeah, and as long as people.
What is when people go out and they go out and buy the soft drink that they like because they like it.
Exactly.
They may not know why they like it, but they do.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, as long as people keep watching mainstream media, news, etc., this is going to happen, I think.
Yeah. So and I don't know how you get. And now with Milei's, you certainly can't come out and say, "Well, I'm not voting for Milei because he can't win." Well, he can win. It's.
Well, yeah, and that's another thing why I think actually the voting for Milei will increase even more, because in the previous round, sort of to define the candidates per party, nobody in his right mind would have predicted that he would get more than 30% of the votes. Like every single poll was like 18%, 20%, and he was just like the number one most voted candidate. And I was like, wow. And I think that really gave a boost of confidence to a lot of people, saying like, oh shit, he could actually become president.
Yeah, and the other thing too is he has the only drawback to that now is he's not going to surprise anybody, which can work for or against you. But yeah, it'd be very interesting. It could be now that you're actually, because I don't think because everybody who wants, it looks like everybody who wants to vote for Milei will vote for Milei. Gosh, those. Yeah, watching the debates, Massa, he just looks like he's so crooked. Oh,
I think he's really the best example of somebody who has worked his way up through politics. Same for Bullrich, by the way, but and her background is also very interesting. She used to be part of the terrorist movement in the 70s that placed bombs everywhere, etc. And then afterwards, she moved like more to the right when democracy returned.
Those Montoneros, that's what they were called. Yeah.
Yeah, but Massa is basically, he's the typical guy who's not loyal at all. He will just move wherever he can gain power. And even the Peronists, they know that's why they don't like voting for Massa. But nobody else wants to be the candidate. So it's sort of like, okay, if you are a Peronist, you're going to vote for Massa now just because of the movement, not because of Massa.
Yeah. Bullrich and sometimes I think the ones who used to, we have that same phenomenon. These I don't know if they were necessarily terrorists, but like they were in their young days, they were really full-fledged communists, and now they've reformed themselves and went over the right wing. And almost all of them are charlatans anyway. There's so few good ones among them, even though they claim to be reformed. It's there's and then you round out the. I mean, I'd probably be more willing to trust Miriam Bregman than I would trust Bullrich, because.
Yeah, actually, even though I think, of course, her ideas are completely invalid, she is, legit and honest. I think, it's just like I don't like her ideas, but
and I can't help but notice. But if you see, she's kind of she would seem like she was kind of giving Milei a look during the debates. It's like, oh,
yeah, there's a ton of memes that surged after the debate just with that interaction. It was really funny.
Yeah, because she'd talk about him, even though she wasn't responding to him and all this other stuff. I'm just thinking, okay, what's going on here? I don't think he has any interest. But and then you've got Juan Schiaretti, who he seems like a guy that Milei might be able to work with.
Yeah, he's an interesting one because he has some local success in Cordoba, and that's what he keeps going on about. And he's actually, also a pretty reasonable guy, and people that surround his party as well. They sort of broke off from Peronism and are like more like centered.
Well, it sounds like there's also this very large divide between Buenos Aires and the rest of the country, and I think if Milei does get in there, he'll probably try to decentralize as many things as possible, and Schiaretti probably realizes that.
Yeah, so there's this big problem here. It's called co-participation or coparticipación, and basically what that does is it distributes funds to poorer provinces, and basically those are all upheld by Buenos Aires. So, a lot of these provinces, some of them have like 70% people working in the public sector, and they're just like completely maintained by funds from Buenos Aires. Now, at the same time, it's kind of interesting that in Buenos Aires, Milei actually will not win, like in the city. Everybody here is more either voting for Bullrich or for Massa, which is, it's typical like wokeism, Palermo hippie kind of people that think Milei is sort of too Trumpy,
Yeah, he definitely engages in some what you'd call Trumpian theatrics, but there's a guy, you dig deeper there. There's a guy who really has ideas and has and knows what he wants to do. Trump was just a hollow shell. I mean, he puts on the show, but there's nothing there.
I think from that perspective, Milei really knows his theory. Let's see if he can put it into practice.
And you very rarely get somebody who's an intellectual who can do that kind of stuff. And I think that's what's very rare here. It's go through all the taking the chainsaw around, and that's one thing I'm hearing from a lot of libertarians says, well, our presidential candidate better carry a chainsaw around with him.
Yeah. Well, he does.
Yeah. So that's very, and I don't know, but it seems like the structure of how, from what I'm hearing also, it seems like South America is still kind of operating on something like this Spanish feudal model where everything is very directed from the center down. And
in the case of Argentina, that's definitely the case. And it even like the way the land was distributed originally, that is still, or some really high-end families in the upper class that own a lot of the land, etc. And that's been the case in many places in Latin America. Brazil still has that as well, that kind of structure.
And and the land has probably been in the family for 400 years.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
Yeah. So these people have never. Spanish culture has never had or the descendants of Spanish culture have never had they've never had the Magna Carta. They've never really had a capitalist revolution. It's just almost a type of feudalism, but just with modern things attached.
Yeah. Well, I mean, the Magna Carta in
Yeah.
or the Constitution in Argentina is actually very liberal in the literal sense. So of
Yeah.
economics, it's really based off the U.S. Constitution.
Yeah.
And yeah, for a while that worked really well. You know, it from 1850 more or less to 1910 more. You know, it became one of the most affluent countries in the world. Uh,
Yes.
Below that model, and you know that's what sort of you know the people that want to
Yeah.
vote for Milei, they want to go back to that. You know, more of like an incentive-based economy instead of like an economy where that is based off of state assistance.
Yeah. And yeah, and you have to ask yourself what went wrong. Well, I would think probably I'd assume the worldwide depression that hit us in the 30s, but it sounds like it was unraveling really a little bit before all that.
Yeah, the 20s and 30s in Argentina, Argentina got hit really hard with the Great Depression and just the demand for agricultural products, etc., and the fact that they never really created an industrial base and were very focused on primary resource exportation. Like that sort of tied it in, and they're basically still struggling with that because that's why Peron became so popular. For example, talking about, okay, we have to build up the industry, their national industry, and that's where
Yeah.
import tariffs came about and protecting the local market, et cetera, and all that stuff is still in place. And it would have been better if that would have just surged sort of naturally without all those barriers for trade, because the thing
Yeah.
basically that always messes around with Argentina and growth potential is just like all these blockades and limits and taxes that they try to tack on just to protect the local market. And then some people, of course, benefits from that protection and they want to keep it in place because they have a little business around it. And yeah, that's just the way it goes.
You know the other thing too is this just made me realize there is South America does not have any big car manufacturer of its own, does it?
Own brands? No. So for example,
yeah, that's what I mean. I mean, you can buy a Ford, you can buy a Toyota in South America, but I mean,
mm-hmm.
its own. There's no South American car company.
No,
which I find, in spite of the fact that Brazil has 200, about 200 million people. Argentina has 45 million. I mean, these countries could certainly. You'd certainly think somebody somewhere would say, "Hey, I'm gonna start my own. I'm gonna start my own car company," and would probably at least sell itself on being, "Hey, this is the South American car company. Buy from buy."
Yeah.
Yeah, and the
I
other
mean,
thing,
it has been tried before. I mean, now
yeah,
Argentina has this really wacky kind of electric car that is super subsidized, doesn't really work.
okay,
And
yeah,
yeah, and Brazil tried it in the past, I think too,
yeah,
but it always fails compared to international manufacturers that set up shop in those
yeah.
countries. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I can imagine some of the car companies probably even have plants there too, but
Yeah, yeah. I mean, Toyota has a
that would
plant
make
here.
sense. Yeah.
Fiat, Renault, a lot of French car companies have plants here as well. Volkswagen, like most of the big brands, Ford as well.
Yeah, and the other thing too is I think this would really benefit South America is I don't see I don't think there's ever been much of a railroad industry there.
Well, Argentina was one of the biggest railroad networks in Latin America, and that was all funded by the British.
Yeah.
British during a couple of years around 1900, they were like the biggest investors here. I think foreign investment
Oh,
from Great Britain was actually about 90% to Argentina at some point for like 2 years. and they really created a railroad network that is still, partially in place today. A lot of it's completely, not unusable right now. But and
Yeah.
that was all with the idea of like, okay, we're gonna make it easy. Basically, what China is doing now in Africa and also starting to do in Latin America is like make it easy to bring all those resources to the ports and export them.
Yeah. I was thinking about that. It's amazing because Britain built railroads everywhere, and that was really before. That was really how you got around before cars, and
Yeah,
and one reason why I think of that too is just because I've been to the rainforest, and I just thought to myself, this would be a fairly easy way to connect the rainforest, and it would not, and railroads really do not have that much of an environmental impact. You can just kind of, you know,
yeah,
I mean, it would be perfect. When I went to Iquitos in Peru, you had this city that's 500,000 people, and you go there by boat or go there by air. But yeah, so that was just what but you got to get started. And the other thing too is I don't think people don't trust the governments enough that they're going to take a risk on that kind of undertaking with private money.
yeah. That's the thing, because that has to be done, with public initiatives as well, because it's just like such big distances,
Yeah.
etc. But I think maybe China is actually building some railroads right now from Vaca Muerta, like the biggest oil fields, to a local port there. It would be awesome if either China or other international investors would actually put some money down for like high speed railroads. I mean, but at the same time, there's not that many people in Argentina for that
Yeah.
to make it feasible. And of course, Argentina would have to take on more debt because they can't finance that kind of stuff themselves.
Yeah, I mean, yeah. Railroads are so much what helped build the United States of America. It's just a
Yeah. Oh, plus, and here, another thing is all the unions and syndicates. That's a really big problem here, and it's always been. And they do everything in their power, like in the transportation sector, to make sure that trains are, subpar compared to
yeah.
buses and trucks, etc.
That's that was always the cliche people would say about I didn't like Mussolini, but at least he made the trains run on time. It's I don't know if you ever heard that cliche.
Yeah.
People say that just, and then in a lot of cases people want a certain amount of order. They want to most people want to live in a place where the trains run on time or whatever. It shows things are ordered and you can have some predictability in life.
Yeah.
So you've got kids down there. How many kids you got?
Yeah. So I have two daughters
Yeah.
here. So yeah, I really want things to go,
Yeah.
improve a little bit for their sake as well.
Yeah. Where'd you live before you moved down there?
So I'm originally from the Netherlands,
Okay.
and I moved directly from there to Argentina.
What do you think about what's going back in the Netherlands right now?
Well, I'm very glad that I left Europe because,
Oh,
yeah, I'm very cynical on Europe's future, and I was always a big proponent of the European Union, etc. I've even been to a European school, but seeing how it all turned out with Brussels and the euro, and how they're having this top down approach without really having a federal model, and sort of
yeah.
taking away the identities of each country, with a bunch of policies that really don't benefit anyone. Like, for example, the immigration policy is just like off the
Yeah.
charts, ridiculous. I'm all pro immigration. I'm an immigrant myself, but the way they handle it in Europe is it makes no sense at all, and it's
Yeah.
just a ticking time bomb.
Well, there's also the situation with the farmers there right now.
Yeah, that's another thing. Like, I went back this month, and I was just like amazed with the amount of propaganda for, like, basically what I call the eco Taliban.
Eco Taliban. Yeah. As pessimistic as I am about the USA, Yeah, even more so about Western Europe. I see there's a
Yeah,
little
same.
more hope for Central Europe, but
Yeah, it seems like Poland and Hungary, etc., they're sort of fighting back, but I'm not sure like how long they can actually hold up. Um, but
well,
if this situation with Israel and the Muslim community within all of these countries, if that sort of goes out of hand,
yeah,
which it looks like it could be escalating, I think we're at a point where it's going to be very interesting to see if the European Union actually survives this decade.
yeah.
Which I really question that.
Well, I would love to see the European Union get ripped apart because it's just and this is the thing I think Poland and Hungary are kind of saying to ourselves, well, we used to be taking all these orders from Moscow, and now and we didn't break away from that just so we could take order from Brussels. It's
Yeah, exactly.
I've heard Irish people say I've heard some Irish people say the same thing. We spent 300 years fighting to get independent from England, and now we've just given up our independence again. It's and and there are so many things to love still to love about Europe because
Yeah. I mean, I
it's
love.
it's unfortunate to see how it's went that way, but I
Yeah, I get really sad, thinking about it because I also lived in Spain a while, and
you
always went to Italy, etc. And I think Europe has a lot of very nice parts, nice people, etc. But I just don't think I just don't think there's like real future there.
the other thing too though is what's it like raising kids in Argentina versus raising kids in say Europe.
So yeah, I think it's easier here, just because. Well, of course, you do need to have the income. So having foreign income really helps. But my wife, she earns in pesos, and she has a pretty good salary for local standards. So we would be able to do most of the stuff we do on her salary as well. But yeah, we send our kids to private school. That's still very reasonable. It's like I think we're paying like 120 bucks a month or something. Healthcare for the whole family, it's covered by her employer, but if we would have to pay that out of pocket, it would be around
Yeah.
300 bucks a month. And that includes literally everything. You do not have to pay for any kind of test or medical specialist, whatever, dentist. It's all included. So and the healthcare here is like really high standard too.
That's yeah. We've had different views on that. And the other thing too is isn't it still a little more traditional down there than Europe? I mean, I think Europe is also just completely. Nobody has kids. People don't get married. I mean,
Yeah, it is
lots of divorce.
definitely. Yeah, it is becoming a little bit more like Europe. So birth rates are dropping in Argentina, but it's still like at replacement levels.
Yeah.
And it's definitely the traditional family is way more standard here than it is in Europe.
Well, also just regulations on raising your kids and people. Like in America, it's child protective services and stuff like that. You try to in America, if you let your like if my mother left me in the car with the motor running when I was 7 years old, and that was for like 5 minutes. But now in America, if you do that, somebody will call the police on you. It's just
Oh yeah,
it's so ridiculous. I you know I think sometimes South America is a little more, but it also seems to just be better if the country was a little poorer. But maybe Argentina's gotten a little more closer to some of these modern problems just because it had a legacy of being more well off. So yeah, so this is good to think about. I mean, what other obstacles do you think Milei might run into if he does win? And it sounds like you're pretty confident that do you think he'll win, or do you think it'll go to another election? And what if there is another election? What day would that be?
that would be in November. So it would be about a month that we would still have until that second round.
Okay.
And then around the 10th of December is when the new government starts.
Yeah. That doesn't. Boy, that's a pretty quick turnaround.
Yeah, well, yeah, here it feels like decades in terms of like how long it takes. Yeah.
Well. In America, the president is elected on the election is on the first Tuesday after the first Monday. So that's usually between November 2nd and November 8th. And then the president is inaugurated on January 20th. So that's 2.5 months basically. But
Yeah.
But in Argentina, it sounds like it's only about a month and a half. So that's
Yeah.
Yeah, and in fact, it used to be even longer that the president wouldn't go into office until March. But I don't know why they moved that back. But for some reason they did. But yeah, so it's and also understanding the system. Would he have some deputies in the Congress or not, or how would that work out for him?
So I think he would have some deputies for sure, but then in the Senate he doesn't have almost anybody. So the thing is, like, if he wants to annul certain laws that have to pass through Senate, he would not be able to do that. So a lot of things that he wants to do, so like for example dollarization, he would really have to decree that, and then just sort of hope that it works out, and that because they've already threatened, like, okay, if he does start to do that, then we're going to initiate, like, what do you call it again? The procedure to remove him.
Remove dollarization, yeah. Well,
Yeah.
And that's the other thing too, is you see a lot of these presidents get in there and then they try to do the right thing with rule by decree, but then you end up setting this precedent for rule by decree. So then 20 years later, the bad guys say, well, I can rule by decree as well. So it's.
Yeah, well, that precedent has already been set. Like, the amount of decrees in the last 4 or 5 presidencies was really off the charts. Like, it's pretty standard to do a lot of things by decree, unfortunately.
Yeah, and I don't know how you get away from that, but at least it seems in some cases you may end up, and sometimes the fights against that come locally. I don't know, but it sounds like I'm going to assume that the provincial governors in Argentina probably don't have as much power as, say, a state governor in America, and I suppose a mayor down there probably doesn't have as much power as, say, a mayor in America. But I'm not.
Yeah, no, I think they have definitely less power than. Well, I'm not sure actually if it would be on the same level as in the States or not.
Yeah. So it's more that Spanish model. Yeah. So, a lot of people say too, though, that even if Milei doesn't win this election, he's already won anyway.
Yeah, and that's actually true, and I think that's no matter what happens, that's the positive thing that we can take home from this whole election cycle, is that everybody started to talk about the deficit. Everybody started to talk about what printing currency does to the peso. There's just so much more thinking about public sector employees, like how that impacts the deficit, and what printing does to currency, etc. All those kind of narratives, you would never hear anybody talk about that. And basically, all the other candidates have taken over Milei's points as talking points, and the only thing they talk about is Milei's plan for the government, because he's the only guy with a really concise plan of the stuff that he wants to do, and the other people are just like winging it until they get elected, and they will just be like, okay, now I'm going to see what I'm going to do, which is it's not very serious.
Because I'm also hearing that if the election was just everybody under 40 voting, he would win easily.
Yeah, definitely. It's a lot of these older people that are reluctant to vote. Also, women are more reluctant to vote for him because of his abortion stance. But yeah, mainly older people, like 40 plus, more around the 50 plus range. They are very reluctant to vote for him. They either go for Bullrich or for Massa.
I don't know what to say. I'd also be curious, too, because I hear talk about women voting in America, but I've also noticed that the that the media and all the people who claim to represent women really are just representing single women.
Yeah.
Is it that way down there too? Because there's definitely a gap in America between married women and single women.
Yeah. No, yeah, that's the same thing here. I think it's sort of like the woke feminist kind of movement that eventually works against women, in my opinion, because it sort of delays the inevitable arriving of their 40s, where a lot of women realize that, oh shit, I'm now it's too late, and I actually wanted kids, or that's just something that is starting to happen more and more here as well.
I really hope you guys don't go down that road. It's just I just because I don't see it in South, because it would just kind of kill South America for me. It's the whole.
Yeah, well, I mean, Argentina has always been very progressive in those kind of stances. I mean, it's always been at the forefront of the LGBTQ community, etc. Yeah, and that I don't think that will change so much.
Well, this is one question to have. I mean, do you have to use the men's room in Argentina? I mean, or can you say I'm not a man?
Oh no, I mean that kind of stuff doesn't fly here.
I mean that's I mean seriously, it's
no, in that sense, like it's really on the surface, and it's more of like a live and let live situation. The way it started out in Europe, for example, that whole situation in the Netherlands from the 70s, 80s onwards, was always very receptive, and I think the Netherlands was one of the first countries in the world to approve gay marriage, etc.
Yeah,
and it was never an issue of other people trying to force their worldview on or shove it down your throat, and that's still the case here. It's sort of like everybody's free to do whatever they want, and as long as you don't mess with my business, which I think
which is how it should be,
Yeah, exactly.
And also we're not going to have we're not going to have little 10-year-old boys deciding that they want to be girls. And
oh no, yeah, that is
kind of nonsense. That's also happening in America. I
mean that shit really scares the hell out of me, and I think that's more of the case in Canada and in the US. It's sort of like, Jesus, man. I mean, there's a reason why kids have to be 18 before they can get a tattoo or or drink alcohol or whatever. And you're gonna change their life forever by changing their sex and destroying their reproductive organs. Are you fucking crazy?
And even tattoos are reversible. I'm not gonna object if I have an 11-year-old and he wants to get some crazy haircut or shave his head. I'm gonna say, well, okay, the hair will grow back. It's not. But I might not like it, but you give in on some of those things. But that's where that's where I think South America. I mean, I do wonder where that goes. Because if you're a tourist or you're walking around, I think the easiest thing, maybe the easiest way to see it is just. Do you see any women with tattoos? And boy, if you see women with tattoos, it's like, oh my goodness, your civilization's gone.
Well, I think then we could sort of give up on Argentina if that's the case. Yeah, it's really, I mean, the tattoos are just like, damn. It's always something like, I always bitch about it. And then my wife is like, she doesn't have any tattoos, but she's always like, man, what do you care? I mean, you sound like some old fart or whatever. And I was just like, but this is all going to look like shit in 20 years,
I've gotten to the point where I start to see some older women have tattoos. Yeah, and it's really, I mean,
it's not fun. No.
When they get to be about their 50s, it's like, oh my God. Yeah, it really is. And there are some not you don't have to lose it if you get old. I know plenty of women, and really it's all just about whether or not but also there's also in America, America has some of the highest percentage of people using psychoactive drugs. And also a lot of them are just women traded husbands for Zoloft and Xanax. It's and of course, they're all, crazy, crazy. Well, Stephen Molyneux once said, a woman who has a lot of sex partners when she's young will have a lot of cats when she's old. Uh,
that's sad. Well, I think in the States the main problem is mental health. Really, I mean, everything you see with all these people on the street, etc. There's just like such a lack of accompanying those people that are just clearly having mental issues, and they're just left to their own devices, etc. And at a certain point, that is, I think, one of the only things where the state should interact, or at least try to do something. Is like, okay, you're clearly dysfunctional. Let's try and fix it in a clinic or whatever. But of course, that costs a lot of money. It used to be like that in Europe too, and now you can't do that anymore. And the person has to decide, like, okay, I want this, and otherwise nothing happens.
Well, I think America's really on the brink of something happening here. I mean, it's because you can't have a ruling class that's just so out of touch. I mean, as I've pointed out, a couple months ago we had those horrible fires in Hawaii.
Yeah.
And as I've asked people, I said, okay, Joe Biden's going to Israel. Did he go to Hawaii? No, he didn't go to Hawaii because he cares more about. The point is, he cares more about the people who got killed and it was a terrible thing than he does about the people who lost everything in Hawaii. Even though he's president, even though the fact too that Hawaii overwhelmingly voted for him.
Yeah,
it's. I mean, it really just, and two state governors are going to Israel as well. It's like, and governors aren't supposed to. Well,
they're not supposed to.
State governors aren't supposed to do anything.
Right?
They're supposed to be governors of their state. Yeah, but it's, we're getting too much on America bashing here and bashing.
Well, it's very easy to bash almost anything these days.
Yeah, I mean, sometimes I'm thinking though that maybe this could be some type of. I should probably read those books on Strauss-Howe generational theory, because it seems like there is just more of what they call the fourth turning coming, and there's just another case where all this stuff is going to upset itself and maybe realign in a certain way, and hopefully in a more positive way.
Yeah, I think we're sort of at the peak, peak wokeism / socialism, and I think this is we're at the turning point.
Yeah,
where it's going to be more individualist again, like after this.
But we also thought socialism was dead and buried 30 years ago too. So
but I think it's waves. It always comes back. I don't think that will ever change. It's just the nature of human beings to have those kind of tendencies.
Well, the other problem too, though, and I'm I don't know if we can test to it, but the one place where socialism has always been alive and well for 150 years, and it's never died, is of course on the college campuses. And this is one area where I've been reading a lot of about the history of Marxism, and several people have pointed this out, that Marxism was possibly going to die before 1917, and then you have this one revolution that suddenly maybe puts it in people's faces. I don't know if Milei is going to be the Lenin for capitalism. I mean, and whatever you can, granted, I know Lenin was an absolutely horrible human being, but you can't deny that he wasn't effective, and he certainly was.
He was very effective.
Probably maybe the most impactful person in the 20th century, unfortunately.
Yeah.
I mean, or you could just say Marx. I mean, Karl Marx ruled the 20th century. He really did.
He did, like, from every single perspective, because even in capitalism, everybody started talking about social classes, etc. That's basically his invention. The middle class.
I mean, to say, maybe it's a pessimistic thing to say, but if this species hasn't put socialism into the coffin for good by the end of the century, then maybe this species doesn't deserve to survive at all. It's. I really, it just, you allowed it, Milei, to his credit, he'll bring that up, Miriam, this idea that killed 150 million people, it's,
yeah,
I love that. And And he's making a moral case, which I think really helps.
I think that is a really interesting
Yeah,
way to put it. Like it's
yeah,
it's morally wrong or morally very questionable. Those kind of
yeah,
socialist ideas, etc. I do think they always come back to, but the Nordic countries, etc. But they are very open economies. It's like really not even comparable to Argentina. Plus, like their per capita GDP per capita is like so much higher that they can actually sort of sustain a kind of welfare state. Argentina tries to apply those same policies, being a poor country, and it just completely fails. And it only produces more deficit, which means more printing, which means another currency, going down the drain, and the cycle just repeats all the time.
I the Nordic countries are very interesting studies because first of all, they're very homogeneous as far as their culture is concerned. I mean, and also I think maybe they're small enough. All of those countries have less than 10 million people. I mean, so you end up with a country where maybe somebody in parliament represents. America, our standard federal representative represents maybe 700. Geez, what is it? Maybe 800,000 people now. And when our Constitution was written, the federal rep would represent maybe about 30,000 people. It's and there's a huge difference between those two.
Yeah.
I mean, if you're running for let's say you're running for mayor in a town of 30,000 people, you can arguably get elected mayor simply by walking around all the neighborhoods and knocking on doors. It you might have to have 4 or 5 assistants doing it with you, but that's still doable. It's
Yeah.
but if it's if you're representing 500,000, it's impossible.
Yeah.
Yeah. The American state of New Hampshire, they have a, their legislature, and it's less than every rep is less than 4,000 people. It's so it's a case where almost where half the people in the district know their rep and maybe can even call them up on the phone. Yeah, and it all, and I don't know too. There's another thing too. As people have pointed out, is that a lot of cases too, that Milei talks about the cast. How much does the cast there do to insulate themselves from the mess that they've created?
Well, they're really, I call them the cantillionaire class, because they're the ones that who are closest to the printer. They're
Yeah,
the elites that can still swap or buy dollars at the official rate,
yeah,
which is almost a third now versus the real rate. And they just they're making laws that will benefit their sort of niche businesses. They know
yeah,
the contractors who will do those jobs, and they know the overpricing in the middle. They'll get a cut out of that, and it's that happens everywhere, but here it's like kind of obscene, um, especially
yeah,
given the situation for most of the people, where you have about half of the country is at poverty levels. So it becomes really obscene, that kind of behavior. And really, there's no political um, you know person that or has been there for longer than 20 years that doesn't live a very good life here. And
yeah,
that's been, and they don't, their salaries they're higher than the rest of the country on average, but it's
yeah,
also not that that much of a money maker that they would actually be able to afford all that. So
yeah. But what I'm asking also, they kind of created this sheltered existence where they live in maybe some gated community where they never really think about their house getting robbed. They never really think about
oh yeah, definitely, yeah,
some guy trying to sell drugs to their kids. They've created this protected existence where they where they it's like the analogy Bill Maher said. He said they talked about defunding the police. So well, okay, they defunded the police. So now the poor neighborhoods don't have any police protection. and the rich neighborhoods, they just hire private security, So that's what and said, I don't think that's progress, but yeah.
Yeah, no, I mean, you see that in the way they talk, etc. They have completely lost touch with reality for most people here on the ground.
Yeah, and it sounds like, and it's also could be said too that Buenos Aires has completely lost touch with the rest of the country.
Also, yeah, definitely
Yeah.
the standard of living here is a lot higher, and at the same time, a lot of the services here are still subsidized, so they're cheaper than in the interior. So, for example, there's still subsidies on energy, on natural gas, on transport that you don't have in other parts of the country. So it's actually really unfair because concentration of wealth here is also a lot higher. So why subsidize that stuff?
Yeah, I've heard things like like it's hard to get some things down there too because of high tariffs and stuff.
Yeah.
Is there also maybe this informal economy where people, if they need something, maybe they just go over to Montevideo and get it?
So yeah, Montevideo would not be the ideal place just because
Well, but
Uruguay.
it's a 3-hour boat ride away. You can go there and back in one day.
Yeah. But I mean, their tariffs are sort of the same. Like Uruguay and Brazil, they have similar tariffs on electronics.
Yeah.
Then Paraguay is like the best bet together with Chile. Like that's the closest where you can sort of get a MacBook at the same price as in the States.
Yeah.
And here it would cost like more than double in dollars.
Yeah, but that's not as easy to get to. But yeah, I've heard.
Yeah. And then there's control at the borders, of course. They have your suitcase pass through scanner, and if they find like too many electronics, they'll definitely make you pay those import tariffs anyways. Happened to me once that I had to pay the half of the price of a new MacBook. They said like, yeah, this is new, and it's cost this much, so you're gonna have to pay another $500 to get it in.
Oh wow, yeah. And you had really bought it, or was it just your own personal?
No, it was my own personal, but they didn't care because I was traveling with two laptops, and they were saying, like, yeah, this one is new, and you can only have one laptop per person.
That's
yeah. And I was like, yeah, but this is my replacement. I bought it because I'm going to work with this. No, it doesn't matter because it's new, and you should have declared it.
Yeah, even though yeah, I see. Yeah, the fact you had two laptops, that's what got you flagged.
Yeah, that's why. And then afterwards, I never did that again. I always put the other laptop in my wife's backpack.
Yeah, that's all you would have had to have done. Wow.
Yeah, and it's really hard. I mean, I heard that even Tucker Carlson, they didn't want to let him into the country because of all the equipment that he was carrying around.
Wow, I didn't know that. Yeah. We had one conversation dedicated solely to the Tucker interview, and that was literally though he was just he was just bringing his crew down and everything like that just so they could shoot the interview, and then they were all going to go. They were all going to go back home. They weren't trying to bring that stuff in to keep it there or sell it. It was just they just wanted to work with their own stuff. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly.
I would think though. Yeah, I would think so too, though. Wouldn't it just be easier to figure out some way just to, figure out somebody say, hey, can I borrow your equipment instead of having to ship all that stuff?
Yeah, there are companies that local production companies that do that. They you can just rent all their stuff. Like for example, there's a lot of movies that they film down here in Patagonia, etc. And they always do that with local film companies.
Yeah, do they have? They probably have got a fairly sizable film and TV industry there, don't they? I mean.
Yeah, they do. They
they make movies, make shows.
Yeah, and that's all. Also heavily subsidized, by the way.
Yeah,
that whole industry.
But yeah, that's very interesting. Yeah, I didn't realize Tucker would have all those issues. I don't remember Tucker saying anything about having all those issues coming in.
Yeah, I saw that on Twitter, and it didn't surprise me, to be honest.
If nothing else, too, I would think maybe you could set up a system where you'd kind of. Maybe take a list. Okay, this is all the stuff you bring in, and then when you leave, you say, okay, this is all the stuff you're taking out, Everything,
Yeah.
everything you took out, everything you brought in, you're taking back. So we understand. It's
Yeah, well, you can actually do that when you leave the country. You can fill out some local IRS forms, and then to sort of they give you a certificate that okay, those are the things you took out of the country, and then once you get back, so you don't have any issues.
Yeah, because that's one. Because sometimes I've actually taken trips and I went back into America and I said, well, I just said to him, well, I never really bought anything. Well, except food that I ate, but I said I've got all the stuff that's in my bag is the stuff I took out with me. It's all the same clothes, and that's one thing you probably don't get much question on. You probably not get much question on clothing just because everybody travels with clothes. But yeah,
no, that's one of the things that they don't really care about.
Because I had one guy on here. He told me there are only 3 jobs you could do to get rich. You become a politician, you become a lawyer, or you become an accountant. And accountants get rich because the tax system is such a mess. Is that fair to say, or are there other ways?
Yeah, I think that's a pretty good characterization. I think those are the 3 main jobs that you could do to sort of, figure your way out within the mazes of the system to benefit yourself.
Yeah, so I've noticed also there are a lot of elections on Sunday in South America. Do you know why that is?
Just because most of the people don't have to work on Sundays, so that's why they do that.
Yeah, I figured that is. That's something I've noticed too, and I mean, nowadays in America, you have a few businesses, but a lot of businesses are just open on Sundays. Is Argentina still pretty much a Sunday closed or not? It's
many local mom and pop stores, etc., closed. The bigger chain stores, they all open on Sunday.
Yeah, it's definitely that. Sometimes the gyms are closed and things like that. Still thought of as the day of rest, but they have elections on Sunday, so everybody gets out and vote. If you do you think you're in Buenos Aires, Steve? What are some of the other great cities down there?
Some of the great towns, I would say Mendoza for wine, also a great city, and Mar del Plata for more like the beach life. Also, a lot of stuff to do. It's one of the bigger cities as well.
Yeah,
Rosario is nice, but it's become a little bit unsafe in the last couple of years. Like a lot of narco activity there.
Oh yeah.
Another one that is nice is Cordoba.
Yeah.
And in the south, you have more of like the towns like Esquel, which is the other one. Bariloche is also very nice. So, but yeah, those are more like really small towns. So it's more of like a place where you go and you start the hike from, and there's some stuff to do in the towns, but they're like very small cities.
Yeah. Yeah, that's cool. Yeah, it's definitely an interesting. Well, it sounds like it's going to be pretty good on Sunday, so I think it's probably a good time to wrap this up. You got anything else you want to say before we go?
No, I think we covered most of the things. Yeah, I'm really looking forward to Sunday. It's gonna be fun. We're around 10 a.m. or 10 p.m. We're gonna have the results, so it's gonna be I think 9 p.m. EST. So we'll see how it goes.
And you guys, I think it's about 11:07 here. You guys it's about 1:07 there, right?
Yeah.
It's interesting. Yeah, you guys so that's just where your time zone is right now. Yeah, so okay, that answers the question, and so we'll know what happens. And okay, well, thank you very much, Mara. It's been good talking to you.
Yeah, thanks, Chris. Thanks for having me on.
Please like the video, subscribe to the channel.
Check
out my Substack. Go buy my novel, Escape from the Village. This is Chris Baker, and we're out.